Hey, thanks for joining us for another episode of the Life Podcast. I'm so pumped that you are here. I would not be making podcasts if it wasn't for you guys who are listening and giving me some good feedback. So thanks for showing up. Thanks for listening. And if you have not yet, please be sure to subscribe, like the podcast, leave a rating, review wherever you are listening. That helps me out quite a bit. Share it on Instagram, Facebook, wherever you would like. Share it with your friends, send it in the group chat. I don't care. Just get the word out there that the Life Podcast is for everyone. And I just got to say, it is the week of Christmas, so Merry Christmas to you. I hope all you guys are going to celebrate. You are going to have a great time with your families, friends, however it is you celebrate. So I just want to make sure to say Merry Christmas to you. And I can't believe it's actually already Christmas time because this year's gone. I feel like I'm back in March still and quarantine just hit and yeah, it's crazy. But today I have special guest, Cameron Meade. We went to high school together, so that's pretty cool. And we each, went all over the place, it seems like. So Cameron, go ahead and tell us a little bit about yourself, man.
Yeah. So, like you said, we went to high school together. I think during high school is kind of like where, both of us started to see which direction we wanted to start taking, which roads we start to go down. And I started, being exposed to the LDS faith, and I was going to church with a couple of friends, and it kind of just continued to grow from there. Yeah. And I started going when I was 15, and by the time I got to 18, I kind of just got to that point where I was like, is this for me? Is this what I need to do? Is this what I need to take on? And so I decided to pray about it. And one of the things I've grown to realize is how important it is to just kneel down and pray, to ask God, what's the right thing to do. And so I prayed, with the most sincerity I can muster, and received an answer and felt that it was the right thing to do, and I needed to go down that path.
That's cool.
And so I was baptized when I was 18, and I guess the best way I could describe it is that, yes, it was life-changing, but it also was the beginning of something new for me. Yeah. And so a year after that, I decided, I don't know how familiar people are with the LDS faith, but, many do end up serving missions or serve for a couple of years. Yeah. And we don't necessarily choose where we go, we're assigned. And so I was fortunately assigned to the best mission in the world in Torreon, Mexico.
There you go. Did you learn Spanish? Are you still fluent in Spanish or what?
I'm still fluent in Spanish.
That's amazing, man. I wish I was fluent in Spanish.
I did learn something, though, in Senorita Lee's class. So
yeah, there you go. Shout out to Senorita Lee.
Shout out to her.
Yeah, I took 4 years of Spanish class in high school.
I did too. Yeah. And, the thing is once we're sent out, we go through what's normally like 3 to 6 weeks of, I guess you call it training, preparing to be a missionary. And for those that are going to different countries where you have to learn a new language, well, part of that training's, learning the language. Yeah. And so some of that skill set that I attained, through high school and learning Spanish, I could use that there.
Yeah, that's really cool.
And so, that was definitely helpful. But, going straight into we call it the mission field, going straight there to where you're going to be serving and trying to communicate with people in Spanish, hearing a gringo talk to you. Spanish is kind of, it's kind of an interesting experience.
Yeah, for sure.
And so that was definitely a big challenge for me. But, as I continue to strive to just talk with people and try to show interest in them, I got better. And so as I was able to continue practicing and talking with people, conversing with them, I was able to improve that.
Yeah, that's really cool. Thanks for, so now you are currently doing an internship. Yeah. Tell us a little bit about, where you are now.
Okay, so when I came back, I started studying at BYU, Idaho. It's over in eastern Idaho, Rexburg area. And I just decided that I wanted to do construction management. I gained experience in high school in the Columbia Basin Student Home Building Program.
Oh, yeah. It's a cool program.
It is a really nice program, and it gives you the ability to, get hands-on experience with local contractors. So that really sparked my interest in construction. And, ever since I joined the major, I've just loved it. I fell in love with it. And this is my second internship, so I've learned a lot, and I'm excited to graduate and continue moving on in that same career.
Yeah, very cool, very cool. So we brought Cameron on the show today. Actually, you reached out to me and wanted to be on the show, and I love that. If anybody's here and you want to be on the show, reach out to me. We'll see what we can do. But man, I thought it'd be great to have, a different voice than my own on the show and hear what you have to say. So we're going to talk a little bit about your mission today, share your story a little bit. And then we want to talk a little bit about Christmas as well and just offer you some hope because Christmas is a rough time for a lot of people, especially in the year 2020, where it's already been kind of a tough year for a lot of people, a lot of, depression rates, anxiety rates, suicide rates, drinking rates, smoking rates. Like those are all like skyrocketed this year. And around Christmas time, those things jump up anyway. I can only imagine, the stuff that people are feeling right now being 2020 and being Christmas time. So we just want to offer you some hope today as well, wherever it is that you are. So, without further ado, do you have any fun plans for Christmas really quick before we jump into it?
We're going to have a nice hearty good meal, Christmas Eve and Christmas Day with my family. So I'm really excited for that. I don't know about you, but I really love food. So
dude.
I'm excited for it.
Oh, yeah, dude. Fun fact, I've shared this on the podcast before, but I've gained at least 20 or 25 pounds during quarantine.
Nice.
And, I know I don't look like it, which is, God bless. Thank you.
Yeah,
but,
I've gained a few pounds that I don't want to count. So.
Yeah, for sure. So, let's get into it, man. So go ahead. You shared a little bit, kind of about what happened, but kind of share a little bit more about your mission, maybe a couple things that you learned down there about yourself, about God, about serving. And you met your wife there, so you got to tell us. You got to tell us a little bit about.
I'll tell that near the end.
Okay.
So first and foremost, I think I can just put it into a few key points of what really impacted me when I was in Mexico. First thing is that I learned a lot about myself. I learned the things that I was doing well at, and I also learned the things that I need to improve on.
Yeah.
And, as missionaries, we're assigned teaching companions and, we don't get to choose. We don't get to choose who we go out and teach with. We're assigned them. And so you'll be assigned people that, you fall in love with, you become best friends. You'll be assigned people that, you hate each other's guts to play. And starting off, it was a big challenge for me, not just the language barrier, but, just being away from home and also just having some teaching companions that, I didn't fall well with. Yeah. And the biggest thing for me at the very beginning was just learning to be humble. Yeah. And humility is just one of those key things that, if we don't strive to attain it, we don't improve. Yeah. And, a lot of the things that I was struggling with was, accepting advice, accepting that, there are things that I need to improve on. And, as I continue to ponder it and think about what it is that I needed to do to improve, that was something that really continued to rush through my mind. Yeah. Another thing was that, it was a culture shock for me. Ooh. We grow up living in a wonderful society that gives us literally everything. We have everything, in our hands. And you go to some place, far distant place where that's not necessarily the case. Yeah. And you come to realize how grateful you are for the things that you do receive. Yeah. One of the things was, having, a nice home. Mm-hmm. We lived in homes, but they obviously weren't in the best conditions as we could compare them to here. Yeah. And there was one point where we had to go looking for a house, and, I was just so scared of not finding one in that day that I just decided to pray as well, and, felt a impression that we needed to go to a certain place, and we didn't end up finding a place to rent. Wow. And it wasn't the best place. It wasn't the, fanciest or most glorious place you could find, but it was a home. Yeah. It was a place where we could live and where we could, begin our studies and go out and start a new day every day.
Yeah, bro, I got to be honest with you. One of the things that scares me the most about following God and really pursuing him with everything I have is that the gospel really calls us to live an uncomfortable life. It does. And for me, if I am in any bit uncomfortable, I will shy away from that situation.
You start to freeze a little bit.
Yeah, start to freeze. And even things for example, my wife and I, we were living in our own apartment, and we're kind of in a transitional phase right now, and we're living in my mother-in-law's house, and it's great. I'm not mad about it. We don't got to pay rent, so that's cool. But it's just a little bit uncomfortable because it's not my own space. It's sometimes hard to find privacy. And the gospel, I look at stories all over the Bible, and you see guys like Paul who are just constantly, getting beat, staying in these terrible places in prisons. Yeah. And I'm like, man, these guys are uncomfortable for the sake of the gospel. And it sounds like, there was, a little bit of that aspect in your own mission. So it's really cool to hear. And I think that kind of goes hand in hand with being humble as well. Like just really, saying, God, if this is what you want me to do, if this is where you have me, and if that means being uncomfortable and being with people that I don't necessarily care for or whatnot, like that takes a level of, really humbling yourself before God and saying, you know what, this is your will before my own, what you want me to do before what I want me to do. And I think that's powerful. And that's a huge lesson. I think that's awesome that you learned that.
Well, just bouncing off of that, I mean, another quick thing that I really came to realize is just how important it is to love everybody.
Yeah.
Because despite not being able to get along with everybody, we should still try to love them. They're fellow brethren, and they go through life just as we do, and they end up in different circumstances, and who am I to hate that person or to despise them, or it's our duty to really love everybody.
Yeah, it's uncomfortable to love everybody.
It is uncomfortable.
It's hard.
The gospel's uncomfortable.
Yep, I love that. Love that, for sure. If you don't take anything away today, take away that. The gospel is going to be, if you're following Jesus, it's going to be a little bit uncomfortable, and that's just the plain truth. So,
but the biggest thing that I've taken away from that is, even though it's uncomfortable, we can't grow without feeling uncomfortable.
Yeah, true.
And it's kind of like when you're learning to do something new, you have to fail in order to improve. You have to fail in order to climb the ladder. It's the same with the gospel. You have to be able to feel uncomfortable in order to feel joy, in order to feel happy.
Yeah.
And so that's my big takeaway from it is that, I suffered a few times, but the blessings and, the countless joy that I experienced far outweighs the pain and the suffering.
Yeah, the book of James says, count it all joy, brethren, he says, when you experience trials of many kinds. And when we experience trials, we say, no joy here, only anger, only mad, only frustration with God. But he says to count it joy because trials produce other things that we need, other blessings in our life. So that's very cool. Keep telling us a story about your mission. What are some other things that happened?
Okay, so I think another huge thing for me was just developing faith. I mean, there are a lot of times where you go knocking on doors and you get a lot of doors slammed in your face, not people that are too happy to see you. Yeah. And so, from our perspective, obviously we're like, what the heck, we're just trying to do the right thing. We're just trying to help people, come closer to Christ. Yeah. And, when someone turns away from that, it doesn't feel the best, but you just have, I think for me, I just had to understand that, despite someone not accepting it, maybe they will later down the road. Maybe they're just not ready. Yeah. And so that helped me develop more faith in that I knew there would be people that were waiting to hear what we had to share. Yeah. And that took a lot of prayer. It took fasting. It took effort, obviously. But we did end up finding people. Yeah. There were countless people that I had met while knocking on their doors and literally told us I was praying that someone would come to teach me this gospel.
Wow, that's amazing. Are there any stories in particular that you could share with us, or something like that?
There was one lady, it's a little bit different, but she had heard our message before, but wasn't quite ready to accept it. And so, a couple of years had passed, and so we came knocking on her door again. Yeah. And we found her, and she had told us that, she had listened to the missionaries before, and she just told us that she just had a whole bunch of doubts that kept her from, wanting to join or wanting to join the church or wanting to accept the gospel, period. Yeah. And we just told her, well, think about this moment right now. The Lord's, he might have taken us away from you for a little bit of time for you in order for you to reflect, and we're back here now. Yeah. So what does that tell you? And instantly she just, felt the impression, she felt the Spirit that it was the right thing for her to do, to accept it. Yeah. And so she was baptized, she became a member. Another instance, there was another family that we had met, and they had also received the missionaries before. A lot of people that we had met that had come in contact with us, I guess, just throughout the last decade or so. So many had come in contact with those people. Similar situation. She was a single mom with 5 kids, and just, I guess to put it this way, she was suffering from depression, anxiety. Yeah. And her biggest issue was, what if I go to church and people judge me? Because she didn't have that much. Compared to the rest of the people that attended our ward or our body members, they were a little bit in better condition than she was.
Yeah.
And we just told her, listen, if you go this Sunday and there are people looking at you, then you know it's not the right place to go. Told her straightforward, because I was that confident that, those members that I had come to know were going to love her enough to accept her and take her into, I guess we could call it, the fold. And she went that Sunday, and there were a whole bunch of members that came up and greeted her and told her, I'm happy you're here.
Wow. That's powerful.
And so that really stuck out to me, that, it's not about where you come from necessarily or where you've been, but just the fact that you're trying to come closer to God or come closer to Christ, that's enough.
Yeah.
And when people do that, I mean, the members there, they see it and they want to help them. And I think that having that Christ-like love for everybody can do wonders.
Yeah. That's awesome. That's awesome. I know it's, even just like newcomer, for example, we had our Christmas services here at church this last weekend, and a lot of new people showed up in the door, or like walked in the doors for the first time, and we had somebody tell us, they're like, wow, that was like the most welcoming church that I've ever been to. And like, she's like, I want to come back. And I mean, that speaks wonders. Like, we are to represent God in all things that we do. And when we are judgmental and not welcoming and like just, kind of turn the other way to people, like that's not what God would do at all. As a matter of fact, Jesus went to the lowest of the lows in society and said, hey, why don't you come have dinner? Or why don't I come have dinner with you? Or went to the woman at the well, who wasn't really viewed as a person in that time because she was a woman, and sat with her and, was intentional with her. So I think that's awesome that you share that. And I think that's so powerful. And I just would hope that so many more churches and people who represent God ultimately would understand that. So that's cool. Thanks for sharing that.
For sure.
Yeah. Keep going with your story, man.
I'm going. Let's see. I think another neat thing was, I guess, learning to combat difficulties and trials. Mm-hmm. I mean, even as missionaries, we have our own, personal problems or personal difficulties. And, one of mine was having patience. I was a missionary that was just like a go-getter, but
yeah.
At some points I had, teaching companions that were a little bit slower, were going through trials that were a lot deeper than mine, I guess we could say it. I had a few that had depression and anxiety, and that was a little bit of a challenge for me and for them. But one thing I just came to understand was that, in order to successfully, complete our mission, we have to work together. Yeah. I can't do everything on my own. I can't. Yeah. Even with my own, desires, I can't personally just go out and teach thousands of people by myself. Mm-hmm. I need somebody to help me. And that really helped me just kind of like, I want to say it was kind of like a nice marriage prep.
Yeah.
Right. So, being able to go out with someone that, is struggling a little bit, pushed me to help them, and it pushed me to help lift them up so that they were willing to be at the level I was trying to get to. Does that make sense?
Yeah, for sure.
We met so many people, and I guess another key takeaway for me was just being able to experience a whole new culture.
Yeah.
I don't like to compare like the U.S. to Mexico, but I love Mexico's culture a lot more. They have better food. They have, I like to go out and dance with my wife. We like to have fun. And so that was something that kind of really helped shape me, who I am today, was just being in a different place and really trying to experience it. And so I think whenever we go to, teach someone or share a message with someone, we should adapt ourselves to kind of like what they're used to 100%. Show interest in them. And
Paul said, I become all things to all people in order to relate with them. So, that's so key. Like, we can't just go and say, hey, we're from America, this is how we do things. No, that's not going to work at all. Like, you're going to have to relate to these people. I actually heard a missionary, I don't remember what his name was, but he was saying that he went to some South American country, and some family asked him to stay at their house with them. and he, reluctantly agreed because he was staying in some really nice place, and these guys' houses were like in the poorest district of where he was at, and he agreed to it. And he practiced their customs. He said he slept with like all the sons in that family. Like they all shared one bed. There was like 5 sons in one bed, and they said, you know what, you can sleep on the bed with the boys because that's like how you would treat a guest over there. And he was like, I don't really want to. I'll sleep on the floor. But he did it, and at the end of his stay, this mom of the family said, no missionary has ever come where we lived, has never stayed in our house, and we just want to say thank you. And they were like so moved by what had happened, and yeah, I think that's powerful. So powerful. I'm so glad you shared that.
For sure.
Yeah.
There's something else too that I can jump back and forth, but there was another moment where it's kind of different celebrating like birthdays and Christmases, obviously, because you're away from home. And I'll never forget the second birthday I spent there is 2018. Obviously it was a working day, and so we were out pre-take. Didn't really feel like too much of a birthday. But the nicest thing though is that same lady I mentioned earlier with the single mom with 4 kids, she bought me a birthday cake.
Oh man.
And she didn't have really anything. She was literally going through the streets to find stuff to sell.
Wow.
And there was this one bakery in different parts of where I was serving that I'd always wanted to go to. I always wanted to buy a cake from there because it just looked good.
Yeah.
And she bought a cake from there.
Wow, that's amazing.
And to this day, I have never received a better gift than that.
Dang.
Because it came at such a high cost.
Yeah.
And I guess on that note too, it almost reminds me of, Christ and his ultimate sacrifice.
Absolutely.
That's probably another great gift that I could never repay or
be
grateful enough for.
Yeah.
And that can probably sum up my mission experience, was being able to truly understand Christ's atonement.
Yeah. Wow.
His sacrifice.
That's very powerful.
And the more we suffer and the more we, feel temptation or go through trials, the more we feel depression or we have, difficulties in life, the more we can come to understand his atonement.
Yeah.
And the more we can truly understand the scope of what he went through because, we feel a little bit of it as well.
Yeah.
And I think for me, that definitely was the kicker for everything, just coming to know him better and being able to express that knowledge with other people.
Yeah, that's awesome. I think what, kind of just big picture thing that I'm grasping from your story is that is the importance of serving and really just doing whatever it is that God asks you to do. Because it's in those things that you really begin to learn more about yourself. Had you never went on that mission, your life would look totally different right now. Your understanding would be totally different right now. Yeah.
I wouldn't have the same goals. I wouldn't have the same dreams. I wouldn't have the same direction.
You wouldn't have a wife.
I wouldn't have a wife.
Yeah.
And I'll get to that in a minute.
Yeah, for sure.
But it helps prepare you so much that from the time you start to when you get home, if you do it right, you will know what direction to continue heading for the rest of your life.
Yeah.
If you apply the right principles that you learned to your life after the mission, you will know what to do.
Yeah.
And I'd like to put it this way. I mean, getting baptized and joining the church, that was a good starter and a great, a great adventure to begin with. Mm-hmm. But the mission was what prepared me for life.
Yeah, that's amazing.
And I'll jump into my wife's story, but she was also a missionary that had decided to serve there, but she was from Mexico, just assigned to a different part in Mexico.
Nice.
And so we both met when we were serving in the same area, and we got to know each other really well. And so women in the church, they only serve 18 months, men serve 2 years. And so I actually got there a few months before she did, but we didn't even get to know each other until near the end of both of our missions. Yeah. So she went home with like 3 months before I did. And that was when I emailed her. I was like, hey, I kind of like you. I really like the type of missionary you were. And I was just, inspired by how she taught. And she told me, well, let's, when you get home, let's just start off as friends. And I was like, oh man,
you're like,
I don't know where this, I don't know where this is going, but I'm going to try. Yeah. I'm going to do my best. And so when I got home, we started talking, and, obviously it just kind of progressed and went from there. But I'll jump in a few months after that. Like, once we were closer to dating, she finally told me, like, the reason why she didn't want to. And she always tells me, it's not that I'm racist. It's just that I'm not necessarily attracted to white people.
Oh my gosh.
You gotta be kidding me. Like, this is above all the reasons that could even be.
Yeah.
Like, this is the one why.
Yeah, you're a cool dude, but you're white.
Yeah,
so we'll see.
It was like a slap in the face. It was like, nah, it's fine.
Yeah.
I won't let it bug me. But I mean, she was willing to get to know me because she considered me a good missionary. Mm-hmm. And that was the whole reason why she even like gave me a chance.
Yeah, that's cool.
And so to this day, I'm still the luckiest man.
There you go.
I'm very grateful to have her by my side, and I'll always be forever grateful for the woman she is and the wife she is.
Yeah, that's you're earning some brownie points right now. Hopefully she listens to this.
I hope she makes me some good brownies.
Yeah, there you go. There you go. That's
I'll help
cool.
her make them too.
And you guys got a fun joke out of the deal now. You can always say, hey, you know what?
That's what we normally tell people.
Yeah.
She's normally the one that tells people the story,
Yeah.
just because like she owns the rights to that joke.
Of course.
So
Yeah.
yeah.
Dang, that's hilarious. That's very cool, though. I mean, go on mission and meet your wife. My school that I went to, we do this Mardi Gras outreach conference every year. And because there's cohorts all around the world, and we all meet down in Louisiana during Mardi Gras, and we hit the streets, we evangelize to people, and it's kind of a Christian conference at the same time. Mm-hmm. And so many of the students, they basically just treat it as like, I'm going to meet my wife here. Like, this is where all the students are, and they go there to find a wife. And it's super funny. Nathan, actually, you know Nathan, that's where he met his wife. So we always...
I didn't know that.
Yeah, that's the joke we always make. And I mean, probably not very fun for him, but we like to poke fun at it. So, yeah, very cool, man. Anything else that you want to share about your mission, or we can move on?
There's got to be something else that's really important.
Yeah. Yeah, we could always totally revisit it.
Yeah,
and,
that's fine.
and
Let's go back to it.
Yeah, we'll move forward. Like I said at the beginning of the episode, we really wanted to touch on this idea of hope during the holidays, specifically during Christmas. For those of us in the Christian faith, we understand that we only have Christmas because Jesus came to this earth, was born of a virgin, and that's why we celebrate Christmas. But for many people, they might not know that. And I really hope that I have more listeners than just Christians to this podcast. And if you could offer hope in any way, if there's anything that you could say, what would you say to these people who are experiencing, depression, anxiety, suicidal thoughts during the holiday season? Like, what could you say to them?
I would tell them to hope for a better day, that despite any trials or circumstances they might find themselves in, there's always light ahead of the tunnel.
Yeah.
And it's kind of interesting. It kind of goes back to, being able to truly understand Christ's atonement, his ultimate sacrifice. Feeling depression and actually experiencing it, and feeling anxiety and self-loathing, all these very deep and dark things, in a way, help shape us to become more like Christ.
Yeah.
And I think that would be my reminder to everybody that's suffering from something, that you're going through it, but in the end, you won't be suffering. It'll only be for a short time.
Yeah.
And that's something I've definitely grown to learn as well, is that despite anything that we could be facing, it's only for a short time.
Yeah, definitely. I think our perspective is a huge tool that we can use. Like, is if we can shift our perspective to, this will someday be over. For example, let's use COVID, for example. COVID's not going to last forever. This season that we're in is not going to last forever. Might things be changed for a while? Absolutely. Who knows how long that'll be. But this won't last forever. People thought, the H1N1 was going to last forever. They thought all these other things were going to last forever. But life is going to go on. And not to put a damper on where you're at in life, because I think it's important that we acknowledge that people are struggling and people are in pain. And just on a side note, offer you hope that only Jesus can offer. If you're experiencing things like depression, anxiety, things that we mentioned earlier, only Jesus can set you free from those things. As a matter of fact, the Bible says that he came to seek and save the lost. He didn't come to seek and save. It said only the sick people need a doctor, and Jesus is the doctor. So if you're struggling, if you're sick, if you have problems, then Jesus came for you. And I think that's the good news. And And that's ultimately the gospel message. And I hope that even as people who aren't experiencing those things would take this holiday season to really remember that and say, hey, like we are celebrating this because Jesus came to save me. Like make it really personal. Jesus came for me, he came for you, Cameron, he came for your wife, for everybody that might step foot into a church building, and those who will never step foot into a church building. Jesus came for you. And I hope that would offer anybody who's listening some hope in whatever season of life that you might be in, just to kind of add on to, what you were saying there as well. So yeah, man, anything else on that? That was a super short section, but I feel like it's important to note as Christmas is literally days away. So
it stays away. And one of the things that I really kind of caught my eye was that Christmas star that's supposed to be happening, I think tonight.
Yeah, it's tonight.
And, whether you're religious or not, just have hope in a better tomorrow and look up at the sky and remember that 2,000 years ago, in not the, most desirable of circumstances, there was a baby born. He was born in not the best of conditions to a very humble family, and yet he did the most remarkable and outstanding thing that anyone could ever do for us. And so when you find yourself in similar circumstances, remember that.
Yeah.
That there was someone that went through a little bit more than you, but that's the reason why you can keep pushing forward.
Yeah.
Is because he did.
Yeah. Something you said just gave me this thought. In the Bible, Jesus is talking about, anxiety and worry. And he says, why worry about tomorrow? Because today brings enough trouble of its own. And when you look back in the Old Testament, in the book of Exodus, for example, God provides just enough for his people for that day. In the wake up in the morning, collect enough manna for one day. It doesn't say to collect manna for 2 days. On the day before the Sabbath it does, because they're not going out on the Sabbath, obviously. Mm-hmm. But to collect enough for that day, meaning that God will provide you everything you need to get through that day. Day by day, minute by minute. Don't try to worry about tomorrow, because tomorrow will bring enough trouble of its own. But really focusing on what you can do today, I think that's super important to this conversation. And moving forward really quick, I really want to add this, and I've been meaning to say it the whole episode, but I just think it's super cool. You being a part of the LDS Church, I don't know what I would be classified as, just I go to a Pentecostal church. I think it's super important that we could sit down and have conversations like this, not, debating, not, trying to say you're right and I'm wrong, or I'm wrong and you're right, or whatever. So important that we could have these conversations, and I'm super grateful that you would, come on here and share about your experiences with Jesus. And I'm super grateful and kind of impacted by your story a little bit as well. So thanks for sharing. I seriously appreciate it, man. Yeah,
for sure. It's edifying, and it's important to, I guess, share these experiences with other people, just because, we learn from each other, and we also learn each other's hardships, and we learn, what we've gone through, and that helps edify us as a whole.
Yeah, I being outside of the LDS Church, my kind of scope of what goes on the inside is very limited. And I see people listening who have had experience with the LDS Church. Their experience has probably been, they knocked on my door one time. And to hear, from your perspective, it's been super helpful for me to know, you are, when you have good news, like, it would be a disservice not to share it.
Right.
So I think it's so important that you guys keep doing what you're doing. It's obviously effective. Maybe not in the United States as much as it might be elsewhere, because the United States is kind of a weird place. But
it's a different place.
Yeah, that's a different conversation for sure.
It's a different place.
But man, I think it's so cool that you guys are really out there trying to reach the world. Do you and I agree on everything? Absolutely not. But you know what? I think we can agree that Jesus came.
Centered on the right thing.
Yeah, centered on the right thing, and we're all going to be in heaven one day. Not saying that all roads lead to heaven. I'm not saying that by any means, but Jesus said he is the way, the truth, and the life, and it sounds like you believe that too. So I'd say we're pretty good on that. Cool. Well, any closing thoughts as we wrap up this episode?
I'd probably just kind of reemphasize the need to keep pushing forward. I know it can be hard. I know it could definitely seem like everything is overwhelming and everything is attacking you and on top of your shoulders, but just have hope for better days. Yeah. I can't stress that enough. It might be challenging, but the reward is so much greater, and that's just pure happiness and joy. a life with God is much better than a life without him. And, when we get to, I've noticed that there are normally two different types of people. There's the people that will, in hard times, grow closer to God because they're more willing to humble themselves and to have him help them.
Yeah.
Then there's some people that when they face trials, they, kind of shriek into a corner and start pointing fingers saying, God, why did this happen?
Yeah.
And it's not to say that I haven't been in that situation. I'm sure you've been in that situation before as well, but we want to steer away from that because it's not going to help us progress and it won't help us to ultimately be happy in life.
Yeah.
The happiest people, I think, are the ones that have suffered the most, that have utilized the power of, Christ's atonement, or have utilized God's helping hand to push through those hard trials.
Yeah.
To me, those are the happiest people.
Yeah,
And every trial that you might be facing, I remember that it's a blessing. It's a blessing to have trials. It's a blessing to be able to face adversity and face challenges because it helps us ultimately grow and to become more like Christ and to become happier.
Yeah. The book of James, again, going back to that same verse I shared, it says that trials produce endurance. And
I like that.
Yeah, endurance means that we will continue day by day. Many people who experience trials are like, yep, I'm done. But when we go through them, then we get this endurance to keep pushing forward. And I think that's why these people who experience trials and go through things are, by far happier, because they understand, they understand that what they have is what God has given them. And, nothing realistically belongs to us. Like, we are simply doing what God has called us to do and living by what God has given to us. So I think that's super key and super important. But thanks so much for coming on the show,
for
Cameron.
Sure. Thanks for having me.
I appreciate it. Might have to have you back one of these days, but
I'd love to.
Yeah, absolutely. If you have not yet, make sure you share the podcast with somebody you know, somebody you don't know. Share it on Instagram, Snapchat. I don't know what the kids are using these days, but make sure you share it, because we got to get the word out there that the Life Podcast is for everybody. Can't wait to see you right back here next week, guys.